want to invite you all to procure your beverage, and you might find a seat whereby you can see the one who is speaking here at the lectern, where the readings happen during the liturgy, and where you might also be able to see the screen. So we will let you choose your own adventure for where you would like to sit in the space. I realize I'm starting like a minute early, but I think that's okay. Can you hear me okay? Yes? Okay, I will use my outside voice even with my microphone. So I want to start with a word of gratitude to those volunteers, some of whom you will be hearing from today, and some of whom may be sitting in the room, who help to steward our parish's resources. They do it so faithfully, so carefully, and with an eye towards our mission and vision and continuing to roll out the edges of the kingdom of God in this time and place. And please know the hours and hours that your fellow parishioners are investing in this careful stewardship, and my abundant gratitude. So thank you. Let us, yes. Let us pray. Almighty God, we give you thanks for your generosity in creating us as your creatures who are able to worship and praise and serve you. We give you thanks for the generosity of time and effort for those who fund our mission and ministry and those who so carefully steward the resources to undertake your work in this place and time. In Jesus' name we pray. Amen. All right, I'm going to turn the proverbial microphone over to our Finance Committee Chair, Brad Ross.
Good morning, everyone. For those of you I've not had the pleasure of meeting, my name is Brad Ross. I have the privilege and the honor of serving as chair of the Finance Committee, along with being part of your vestry. This is an unusual setup this morning, so I'm going to probably break some cardinal rules of presentations. I'm going to read some slides to you, because some of you in the back may not be able to see that very well. And you will have time at the end to ask questions of those of us who are presenting and some other members as well. So let's start with the agenda. So we're going to walk you through what really guides us in our financial stewardship activity as a parish. So we'll start with the mission, the vision, and the priorities. We'll go through our financial planning process. This is a year-round type of activity associated with the finances of this church. Then we'll go through the financial highlights. I'll cover part of that. Sabrina will then join us and present the organ and the 2023 financial highlights, as well as the 2024 budget and capital plan. So I think hopefully at the end of this presentation, you'll have a very good picture of a very good story. Thank you to the generosity of all of you in the room and the people you represent, your fellow parishioners. The financial status of the Chapel of the Cross is very, very sound. And I want to, at this time, particularly point out one member of this financial team who is doing her last duty today, but whom we are very, very fortunate to have as a very experienced, very dedicated, committed, and professional financial professional in Sabrina Olson, our treasurer. So, Sabrina, thank you. So let's start with our vision, mission, and priorities. And again, I'm going to read these to you just to make sure that somebody in the back isn't able to see them. But again, what we say we are as a parish, we welcome you with an open door, and we are called by tradition and mission to minister in the heart of the university and the local community, committed to the sacramental worship of God, engaging in the richness and beauty of Anglican liturgy and music, growing as disciples of Jesus through preaching, teaching, service, and fellowship, and bringing gospel witness to the world. Hopefully, as you see those are not just words, those are what we are living as a congregation. So as a vision, we are an active faith community expressing the full breadth and power and beauty of the Anglican tradition through our liturgy and worship. We are called to equip and inspire parishioners to live out their faith by growing as Christians through education, worship, music, and healing compassion, creating a living embodiment of Christian community with a sense of belonging, fellowship, support, and engagement, welcoming all who come to the Chapel of the Cross, encouraging diversity, practicing inclusiveness, and hospitality, sharing our faith, values, and voice with the community, university, diocese, and beyond, and translating these into action, and sustaining our church by being stewards of our people and staff, facilities, and financial resources as we grow and change. Again, hopefully those words resonate. That's what we're living. That's what we say we are, and hopefully that you experience it in that way. So from a diocesan standpoint, the priorities that guide us as a parish within the diocese is racial reckoning, justice and social healing, congregational vitality, formation, collaborations in new communities, and creation care. We take those priorities and we turn those into our own priorities here at Chapel of the Cross. And those four are welcoming our congregation, putting our faith in action and pastoral care, sustaining our lay staff and clerics, and celebrating our sacred spaces. So back in July, and I'll go into what the process looks like, back in July, the vestry reaffirmed these. These have been our priorities for some time, and we reaffirmed those and said, these are still how we're going to guide our financial process and our parish life. So this financial monitoring and process, and it's really more than just a budget or an annual campaign, it truly is a year-round process that we go through as part of our financial management activity. So we do our annual fund planning, we do compensation planning, we do capital planning, and then we monitor these plans on a monthly basis, both in the Finance Committee as well as part of the vestry activity. So we started back in July with that affirmation that I mentioned of the priorities, and then in August we got into the plan in earnest in terms of we have budget owners on the staff and within the clergy, and we asked for input from them in terms of what they saw for 2024. That process continued in terms of both guiding the capital plan as well as the annual fund goals that were set out for that team. By October, we had received the request back in as part of the budget committee. We did the annual campaign, we kicked off, and one point I want to make here, just because people have asked this question, we ask you to pledge maybe a little faster than you're always comfortable with, but knowing what the pledge commitments are and what our revenue is going to be in the coming year makes the budgeting process much simpler. It takes a lot of the guesswork out for us and allows us to make sure that we're budgeting in a way that allows us to achieve a balanced budget year over year. So when the annual campaign team is coming to you and asking you, hey, do you know, they're not trying to be difficult, they're not trying to push, they're just really trying to help guide this process that we go through. By November, we have most of the input that we need, buildings and grounds in terms of maintenance and capital activity, and that comes together to a recommendation to the Finance Committee. The Finance Committee reviews that. Ultimately, as we get into December, we approve that and make a recommendation to the vestry for their approval of the coming year's budget. As we go through that December, we're getting the final numbers on the annual campaign. That's informing that process to make sure we're we need to be from a balanced budget standpoint. And then in January, Sabrina in particular goes out and communicates to all the budget administrators, because along the way, not everybody may have gotten everything they wanted. We might have made some adjustments along the way. So they're then empowered as they look out over the next 12 months to manage that budget that they had requested. In February, we do this, both the parish financial presentation. One that isn't up on the slide as well is we have an annual audit and we have an annual committee. So the audit committee typically approves the audit sometime in the summer. So that happens as well. And then as we go through the course of the year, we are reviewing this to make sure we're staying on track and, if necessary, making adjustments from a spending standpoint to deliver that balanced budget. In terms of financial highlights, we have a lot of them. We have a lot of good news to share. And again, this is based on your generosity and the excellent management that the staff and the clergy do in terms of the financial resources. One of the things we talked about is our sacred space. The great news is we're in a beautiful, historic, old building. With that comes expectations and requirements in terms of maintaining that. One thing that the buildings and ground and staff have been able to do is move us from a break-fix mentality to preventive maintenance, which obviously anytime you can act on a preventive basis, it's going to be better planned and it's going to cost less and be less disruptive. And we've really been able to make that transition. So some of the things you see, you might see the roof, for instance. You may not see the HVAC, but I can guarantee you, if we don't do it well, you'll feel it and you'll let us know about it. So there are a lot of things that happen even underground and behind the walls that we don't necessarily see, but those are all monies that we committed this year. We did from formation the vacation church camp, as well as relocation of space here for nursery and godly play classrooms. We had a successful fall campaign. We hit a record this year. The team did a great job. Diane, and I don't know if Sally's here. Sally's back there, but again, a fantastic job. But those results are really down to you. They guide the effort. They guide the effort and they do a great job, but it's really down to the generosity of the parishioners, so thank you. We added bequest in the buildings and ground, vestry endowment and capital funds, so some of our deferred maintenance projects we were able to act on. Faith in Action, we spent $338,000 supporting the community needs, including our trip to Ecuador. But again, this is a tremendous statement of living those values and priorities. What we say we are as a parish, we're investing behind and acting accordingly. The Legacy Circle, from a planned giving standpoint, there are 54 current participants. And in addition, we had 5 gifts this year totaling $334,000 from the estates of Daniel Carmichael, Hodding Carter, Jean French, Joanne Hiller, and Janet Jones. Again, tremendous generosity, and what a wonderful way of living your faith. And then finally, supporting our staff and clerics with the sabbatical. Elizabeth Marie was enjoying the sabbatical this year. Jeffrey Hoare came in and joined us, and I thought did a wonderful job over the summer. And then we have our newest member of the team, Karen, who joined us back at the end of the summer, and is already making a big impact in the short time that she's been here. So welcome, Karen. At this point, I'll turn it over to Sabrina. And again, if there are questions about what I've covered or any other questions that you have, we'll be available at the end to do that.
Thank you, Brad. And if you cannot hear me as we're going through, please just raise your hand because my voice is not as strong as Brad's. The church organ is something that we've heard about all year, and I'm not about to report on the construction. I just want to tell you about some of the financial success and where we stand and some of the ways that the Finance Committee has engaged. So we have had a great deal of success with cash and pledges. To date, we've received about $2.4 million in cash. The project's about $3.2 million in total, so we still have a ways to go, and we have a lot of pledges outstanding, and as they come in, that will help us with the completion of that project. We still have the opportunity for some additional expenses to come in as they uncover things in construction, but so far it's going great, and we're really happy about that. And I know we'll all be excited when we are able to go from this great space back into the church. So we're looking forward to that. Want to let you know that one of the things the Finance Committee did do and the vestry approved as to the diocese, we got permission for a short-term loan. And any loan that's greater than a year requires approval from the diocese. And that's to help us with cash flow needs as we go through the final stages of the Oregon project. It's a significant project. It is our hope to draw on the loan at a very minimal basis, but we did get a large enough loan so that if we have some major surprises, we're able to complete the work. So that's a good news story, and so far we have not had to draw on the loan. I don't anticipate we will before April, and it may not be until later than that. So that's a piece of work that's been in the background that you would not have seen. I'm going to speak to this information. There's a lot of information on the finance slides, and you'll probably be attracted to certain pieces of it. I'm just going to tell you the highlights. So this is our balance sheet at the end of December. You'll see we have a lot of cash and investments compared to the prior year, and that speaks to us raising cash and investing it in interest-bearing accounts so that we can pay these bills that are coming due for the Oregon. So it's great to have total assets of $5.7 million, big increase over the prior year. Don't expect to see that when Alistair presents at next year at this time. We're going to use that cash. We have a purpose for it. It's going to complete the great work on the Oregon and the bell tower remediation and some of the other capital projects that we have. The investments had really been suppressed last year because of the stock market, and it has recovered fairly well during the course of the year, so that's another positive thing. And you can see in the net assets, the timing and purpose restrictions has gone, and that's at the bottom of the chart, that's gone up substantially, and that is predominantly related to the funds sequestered for the Oregon, and I'll talk a little bit more about that in a minute. This is just a look at our funds, and our funds are complex. They're donor restricted, they're vestry restricted, some of them are restricted in perpetuity. We've had a subcommittee, and our key person this year, Michael Hardy, who was not able to be here, worked extensively on getting all of the documentation for these funds in one place. So there's documentation, but it's amazing where it can be found, and so he's really done a great job pulling that together. So that's an unsung hero kind of piece of work to do, and we're happy about that, and that work continues. You can see the components of the funds, and so each of these, so buildings and grounds endowment, that includes several specific funds. So there are some that are set aside just for the chapel. There are some that are set aside just for capital. So each grouping has a significant goal within it, and some of those funds support the operating fund. So for example, evangelism and university outreach, the earnings from that goes directly into the operating budget, and that helps support our mission programs. Sorry. These are the other donor and vestry restricted funds, and these funds have no principal. They're to be used for what is needed, and they have specific purposes. And you can see the largest one there is the church organ fund. So we've got $1.2 million of just really of a fund balance that's there to pay the bills. So that's the good news for the organ fund. You can see the capital fund has a fairly substantial amount balance, $739,000, and we have commitments against that. So the bell tower project, it's not a inexpensive project, so $350,000 of that $739,000 will go towards that, for example. And then we have within the other is we created this as a group that you'll hear, I'm sure, more about later, created the seed fund, and that had initially been funded from the You Are the Light campaign. So that balance is included within the other accounts. And then the special reserve is something that is available for the vestry to make decisions about how to use it. And we had in the past thought we might need to use it for the operating budget, but we did not have to do that, and we have not planned for any of its use in the 2024 budget. This chart has a lot of information on it, and I'm only going to speak to the trends in the graph. And really what you can see is over the 5-year period, you can see growth. And in 2020, it's a bit of an anomaly that it was so high, and that was due to many things. Your generosity as a parish, even though we were just worshiping online, people stood up and they paid their pledges, and some people paid more than their pledges. In addition, that year we received a grant that helped us to keep all of our staff employed, and so that grant was also additional income. And how we, quote, spent that money is we said, okay, this money was given to us, we're going to set some of it aside in other funds, and that's why the expenses look a little bit higher. 2021 was a lean year. We were still not worshiping inside. And so we had a smaller budget, but certainly managed within those expenses. This parish has been very disciplined. We can see there's no deficits in any of these years. And I think that's a great comment on all of your generosity, but also the stewardship of the financial resources. So then in 2022, we grew. 2023, we grew. And then for 2024, we've also, with the success of the annual campaign, we've got a further growth in our budget for that year. So then I'm going to talk a little bit about the revenue side of the pie. And in this, I want to begin with telling you about this slide. So the circle is really all about the 2024 budget. The table gives us some history, and I want to talk a little bit about the unaudited 2023 actual. So I used to be an auditor, so I'll always point out it's unaudited until auditors have blessed it. So that's just me being me. And it's true, it is not yet audited. But we typically do not have audit adjustments, so those numbers are pretty good. But if you can see the overall results there for 2023, we had a budget of $2,031,000, and we came in at $2,064,000. So we came in above what we had expected. But where you really see that is you see that again in the generosity of our parishioners. That's you folks and those folks online and those folks who are not here at this time. So that was a great story for us, a great increase over what we had expected. And you can see in that it's about $1.8 million from the parishioners. It's not just annual campaign. That's what people put into the plate. And some people are in the habit of putting something in the plate every time they're at church, and it's not part of their pledge, it's just extra. And then we also have people who don't pledge, but they give unpledged contributions, and those numbers add up. And so all of that coming up to 1.8 million is a really, really significant growth in our past several years. So thank you to everyone for that. You can see we also get diocesan grants, and right now that includes both the support for our campus ministry program, but the diocese is also at this time, and it's limited, time limited, they're helping to support Keith and Karen as curates, and so that is additional money that comes into our operating budget. It's $15,000 a year per curate. Our investment income was really nice in 2023, and that was because cash could earn something, and as many of you know, that was not the case for many years previously. And then all of the other things did well. ABC sale and other, that includes renting this facility, which we also were able to optimize. So that's 2023. This chart also talks about 2024, and you can see again that we've got a 7% increase budget over budget for parishioner support. That's just amazing. Brad's already referenced that. And the only thing I think of to point out is that you'll see we don't have the building use income because we're using this space. And we also, the ABC sale will be smaller this coming year because of the space limitations. And so we've only budgeted $15,000. It's been making between 25, I think at the top it was 37,000. We anticipate for 2025 it will come back, but for 2024 we recognized where we stand. So that's revenue. And then our expenses, same kind of format with the graph. So the table is where we're going to start, and we'll look at the 2023 actual. And what you see there is that the expenses are over budget, and that is because of the one line item at the bottom that's called transfers to capital. When we knew that we were going to have a surplus, the vestry made the decision to set aside additional funds for the capital needs. So we don't, as Brad said, we've made this transition. We don't want to be just talking about our deferred maintenance. We want to be doing it. And you'll see when we talk about the capital for the next 5 years, there's a lot of need. We're doing a good job getting smaller things taken care of. The bigger things are harder because we don't approve to do a project without having the cash. So that's the expense story there. Expenses were higher than in 2022, and that related to the fact that it was, thank God, we didn't have vacant positions. So we didn't add staff and clergy, but we did not have vacancies for much of the year, and that was such a blessing for all of us. So then when you look at the 2024 budget, and you see that there's an increase over 2023, and again, the budget is still balanced. It's an increase of 3.8%. And where have we made those investments? So the good news is in the outreach and social justice, that's gone up. 2 pieces. One is our own choice for Faith in Action. The committees asked for more, and we said, yes, that's great, we can do that. The other thing is that the diocese, which our assessment with the diocese is based on revenues, our revenues went up, so our support for all of the good things that the diocese does also went up, and it went up about 20,000 this year, so that's a big number. And then you can see down in salaries, benefits, and scholars an increase. And we're pleased to be able to have an increase for our staff. We also have in there what I call a geography change. So we're we had previously budgeted a lot for supply organists, and we moved that to the salaries area. And we did that because we now are paying for choir section leaders, and that was really a request by Joe, better use of our funds. So that's the highlights of the expenses, and I'm almost done. But I think what's really important is we refer to this process as our financial planning process. So it's not just about a budget for the annual budget. It's how we look at all of the financial portfolio. So it includes capital. As part of the charter for the Finance Committee is to be thinking about the responsibilities we have to care for our facilities. We don't have a printing press in the basement for cash, so we need to be able to communicate what the needs are. But we now have a process that helps us determine what needs to be done and gets things done. So I didn't point out on the expense slide that each year we make an annual, out of the annual budget, we transfer money to take care of small repairs. When I started on this committee in 2016-17, we were lucky if that was $10,000. We now have budgeted for 2024 that be $80,000. And fixing anything in an old building costs, in my own house, which is not very old, but it costs a lot there, it costs a lot more here. So we're pleased about that. So you can see some of the big projects that are in process right now. The fixing of the bell tower. So apparently all the demolition is complete, and they're pleased because there haven't so far been any big surprises. But that's work that hadn't been done for many years. The roof was replaced on near the end of the year, and that's a lot. Well, first of all, it fixed the roof, but it also is now in good shape to put the solar panels up. So that's another good news story. And the church lighting, which you'll see in a few minutes, kind of the cost. The church lighting project was one, that happens to me every year. Sorry, I'm just going to pause now to do my sorry about that. So the church lighting project has been described as transformational, and I think that's pretty cool. I don't know what that really means until we see it. Again, I'm an accountant, so I don't really know what that means, but I think it's a great story because it's a really thoughtful project that took a long time, and the intent is to get all of that fixed while there's construction going on. So that's another great thing. And it wasn't an optional project because what we had in there was no longer parts or functional. So good news story there. So with the capital budget items, so we have three different ways our capital policy pays for things. We have the operating budget, which takes care of repairs up to $3,000. Then we have this pool of money that is set aside to do anything that is less than $50,000. And that's something that Building and Grounds, working very closely with Diane and Joe Roseman, they work very closely identifying what the priorities are. These are the priorities for 2024. And if something breaks, one of these will get bumped. So if something untoward happens with one thing and it breaks and needs to be replaced, these funds will be kind of reallocated to take care of that. But because we've got that in place, we've been able to take care of a lot of things. And I see Faith there, she's chair of Buildings and Grounds, and she has seen that change over time to getting us to this point where we can really take care of things. More challenging is that third bucket of projects, and that's the projects that are greater than $50,000. How do we get those done, and how do we find the money to do those? Because those aren't funded by the annual operating campaign. They're funded basically by gifts. We do have a buildings and ground endowment that throws off a little bit of income that goes in there, but it's not sufficient. So these are the look that we ask building and grounds to come up with every year, to look out 5 years and tell us what they believe the priorities are. And those priorities are based on what was called a capital needs assessment. It was done in 2020, and it has helped us frame up what we think we need to do from a repair and replacement. But it didn't cover everything, and so there are still surprises. So you can see in here for that over the next 5 years, it looks like for the projects greater than 50,000, that's $2.3 million. You saw that we have about 800,000 set aside right now. We don't approve these projects until we have the money. We're not irresponsible about that. But we've got big things to do. You see what the plan is for 2024 is the lighting project, which actually has come in at about $100,000. So that's gonna save money for something else. And then the foundation waterproofing. Before those projects can proceed, there's a formal process where they need to have formal quotes. Building and grounds needs to be bought in. We have a formal written document that outlines the whole thought process. There's competitive bidding done. We have a project timeline. We have a responsibility matrix, all to make sure that when that project is ready to be approved, it comes to the vestry and they say yes or no. At first, buildings and grounds approves, finance approves, make sure there's the money, and then the vestry approves. You can see for 2025, we've got a lot of things on our plates, and we'll see as the year progresses how those funds become available. Okay, I'm going to stop there, and I think we're ready to turn it over to our moderator for questions. Thank you.
Does anyone have any questions for Sabrina?
One question, Sabrina. Do we know what the rate would be if we do have to borrow money on the capital project?
Yes, we do. We know what the rate would be, and it is something that is required to include in the approval. So the rate right now is 6.75%. Because it's a construction loan that we will draw on, and then we will have principal payments due. If there's a big drop in rates, by the time we get to that point, we would likely go and renegotiate with the bank to get a lower rate if that was possible. So it's higher than we would like, but it was lower than what we had initially expected when we went to when we did the competitive bid process for the loan.
Well, this is not going to be a new idea for finance or stewardship for Diana, but obviously I think our objective should be, as we try to finish up the Oregon campaign fundraising, is to sell the fact that we would like to not borrow any money at all during the course of this project. So I think that can help us if we make that clear to those who have unpaid pledges and to those that have been solicited and haven't quite given us the right answer yet.
Yeah, maybe I'll just add to David's comment is there was a request in December for people to make their pledge payments, and we did get a very large amount of pledge payments came in for the Oregon, which got us to the $1.2 million. So we're really pleased about that.
In terms of the increase in dollars received this year, can you tell us how many members of the parish pledged and the age group that pledged the most? And for upcoming projects, I see that outreach is increasing in dollars, and I wondered how that decision was made in light of capital needs.
So I don't have the information. I don't know, Diane, do you have it for the pledges and, okay, thanks.
Right. We had 495 households that pledged this year, and
How did that relate to last year?
it's about 10, 15 more than last year. And most of our donors at the higher level are, 60 and above in age.
And I would also say this is an opportunity, if you have not filled in your date of birth in the database, you are 124 years old. And therefore, the kind of data that Lila is asking for is harder to pull if you've not updated your data in Realm with your date of birth. And Ellen Cole can assist you with that process.
My third question related to
Faith in action.
yes.
Yes, so keep in mind the priorities that we have as a parish, and that includes capital and our sacred places, but it also includes engaging in faith in action. So there were two pieces to our increase. What the committees recommended, which was not a huge amount, but everyone felt that that was an important commitment to stay with, because we're more than our buildings. And the second piece was it's an assessment we get from the diocese. It's not a choice. We have to pay that increase. So that got us to the $24,000 increase overall.
I may be behindhand, but I wondered if you could explain a little bit about what's having to be done to the bell tower. What did they find, and how is it that, I'm glad it's being found now rather than having some disaster happen, but what is it that has happened and that now needs to be repaired?
So when we started the organ project, part of the organ is going to be installed in that second layer, right, the second level of the bell tower. And when we went in to assess the kind of soundness of that is when we discovered that higher up in the bell tower, it's more the mortar is starting to kind of disintegrate over the years. I think we're coming up on 100 years. Is that right? Yeah. So it's been there for a while. We haven't really done any repointing of the mortar or doing any kind of structural. So we just thought it was a good time to do that, right? So because the higher you go up, the more you see that it's a little more unsecure and needs just a little bit more structural firming up. Yeah.
The lumber itself is all right?
No, there's no, the lumber
it
is not okay. It's more that the stones, right, Melody? The stones are good. It's more that the stuff that's in between the stones that needs to be, and then all the lumber needs to be replaced. Exactly. Yeah. So it's a big project as the budget reflects. So, but we're excited that it started, and we're excited that we haven't found anything that's been unexpected so far. And it's going to be really great once it's done and the organ's there and all the kind of what everyone's being really thoughtful about being able to access it. We're going to have a spiral staircase and, the potential to actually have bells there someday, right? So we're not having them in this space, but we're putting that in place for that. So you're welcome. Oh,
I have a couple of questions about endowment. One is, what is in the endowment? Second of all, is the interest and dividends that it's generating being spent in capital? I'm not clear on that. And also the gifts from the estates of $334,000, is that going to endowment, or has that been earmarked to different things by the people who made the gifts?
So I'll answer the second question first because it's an easier question to respond to. With the organ project in place, the vestry decided to temporarily suspend our undesignated gift policy, which used to distribute, which actually the policy distributes any undesignated gift to capital, the program fund, social ministry, and I think that's it. They determined that what we needed to do was we needed to finish up raising money for the church organ fund, so the policy was suspended. So the majority of those gifts, those bequests, are undesignated, so those have gone to support the organ. The great thing about those undesignated gifts is they're cash. So they're sitting in cash to be able to be used for the organ. I believe the only other one was from Jean French's estate, and that went to support campus ministry. And so that was added to one of the endowments. The endowments, it's a term that some people get frustrated with because vestry designated is the majority of those. And they're not technically true endowments, but they're all, we've got our investments are both with the diocese and some of them with Vanguard. It's a pretty consistent policy that we followed over the years in terms of how we use the income from each of those funds to support either the operating fund, some of them go to capital, some of them go to very specific purposes, some go to support the Altar Guild. There's a whole variety of details as it relates to each of those funds.
And is there an amount in the undesignated endowment fund that you were kind of hinting at?
There's not really an undesignated in any
Well,
of the
okay,
endowment.
but is the quote-unquote endowment growing, and is it
So I would say to you, I would say it's not really growing significantly. No.
but it's not part of what was
No,
listed?
it
was.
It is in the funds, in the slide where I presented the donor and vestry restricted funds. That's where the endowment is included.
Thank you.
And maybe I can have further detailed conversation with you offline if that's helpful.
Carter.
Yeah, one, I couldn't help but add, this is less of a question, more of a comment. I was on the vestry when we were completing the building, and so it was certainly a different time financially. But I'm sitting here looking at this, and it is nearly unrecognizable, and it is such a beautiful thing. And I just want to commend the clergy, the vestry, the leadership team. It is the planning and all of that, and just as a parishioner, this deep appreciation for the incredible stewardship of our finances. So just wanted to add a thanks.
Two questions. One, I wanted to, this is not a question, but this is a thank you for all the work done. The presentations this morning have been excellent. Thank you for all the hard work. I wanted to put in a plug for two things. One, seeing, I'm so appreciative of our adult formation. We looked a little flat in terms of an increase in the budget. One of the things I think would be wonderful if we could have more emphasis on spiritual direction. The other thing is, I'm very appreciative of the services that are done in our aging community. There are a number of communities in this area where the Chapel of the Cross serves. And it's so important for our aging parishioners. I would like to put in a plug for more services for the aging community, all of whom, all the residents are experiencing losses: hearing, speech, vision, etc. And there are marvelous opportunities of service needed. Thank you.
Thank you, Lila. And you know, I see Rob. I'll get Rob in just a second. I had somebody write me on Ash Wednesday evening, and they said, "Thank you so much for live streaming. You have no idea what it means to be able to be part of the community, even though I can no longer physically get there." So some of our investment has been in that capability and technology, in addition to bringing ourselves to y'all. So thank you for both those, Lila.
I want to say I agree wholeheartedly, but there's no substitute for being here.
There is no substitute for being here. I also concur with that, for the real thing and the real presence. Rob.
Just very briefly, I'm curious, under what umbrella would EYC be found, and what is the budget this year for EYC? Has it seen any increase?
Oh.
So we do have that, and that would be included in the formation budget.
Okay.
So keep in mind that we got requests from the budget administrators, so for EYC and also for the formation, and the budget subcommittee, and then the finance committee, and then the vestry, they said yes to all of the requests. So it wasn't that the requests in those areas. I want to be clear that were other requests where we didn't say yes to them all, but in those two examples, we said yes to what the request was.
So we probably have time for about one more question before we transition into turning your seats back around and preparing ourselves for the Great Litany at 11:15, and a word of gratitude to our altar guild who crept in like quiet mice and made that happen. And also, as we're looking around for any other questions, Alistair, would you be willing to stand up and wave? Alistair Nevius has so graciously agreed to serve as treasurer next. Treasurer. She's not replaceable. All right, well, I think we say, Ellen, are you going to say something?
After you say goodbye, I have one little housekeeping note.
All right, one housekeeping note from Ellen Cole.
Your cups are compostable. We try really hard. That's probably something that's not really reflected, but everything we buy here for use in the parish is compostable. And thanks to Anita for spearheading that program. So.